Hi and welcome to class, Chef Roger. I'm about to teach you how we make a beef Wellington. What is beef Wellington? It's a piece of beef tenderloin that I have here. I have two of them. They weigh around 150 to 180 grams each. And those beef tenderloin, I'm going to wrap them in some puff pastry. But there is other ingredient added to them. A mushroom duxelle that you will find in the traditional beef Wellington. But I want to add to that, on top of it, some butternut squash here that I'm going to sweat with some onion. I dice them like a little brunoise. I'm going to show you that in a moment. That's the add-on to the Wellington. And the other ingredient I add is some crepes. I have some crepes here that I made. And I'm using them to protect the puff pastry from the juice that will come out of the beef at one point. Because that juice sometimes just makes your puff pastry soggy. And to prevent that, I wrap them in some crepes. It really helps. So it's a little extra work, but it's worth it. So for the recipe, we need 2 pieces of beef tenderloin, around 150 to 180 grams, 300 grams of puff pastry, 4 crepes, 80 grams of mushroom duxelle, recipe in my channel, 140 grams of butternut squash that are going to be cut into a brunoise. Brunoise are small dices of 1 to 2 millimeter square. 70 grams of onion that we're going to sizzle. We're going to make tiny little dice of them too. I'll show you that also. 1 egg yolk as an egg wash. Salt, pepper, and herb de Provence. First thing I'm going to do, I'm going to tie those beef tenderloin. So to tie them up, I'm going to take a piece of string, make sure the piece of string is long enough. I shape them nice and round. And to make sure I keep that shape as I cook them, I'm going to tie them with that little piece of string. One thing very important is not to forget to remove a piece of string before you put them in your puff pastry. Again, you go like that. Make sure that the string comes nice in the center here, and you're trying to go twice around. So now we're going to season them. Both sides here. Salt and pepper. Taking my saute pan, I'm going to let it warm up a little bit, then add my oil. And we're going to create a nice color, so you want it very, very hot. It's just going to cook very quickly here. I don't want to cook the steak actually, I just want to give it some color because it will cook later on in my oven when it's inside the puff pastry. So very hot heat to the smoking point, so you're sure you're going to achieve a nice color very fast. And then you remove the meat and let it chill. Okay, warm up a little bit. I add my oil. I have like a good tablespoon of oil here for those 2 pieces of meat. This is a recipe for 2 people. Smoking point. It means when you start seeing some smoke coming out of the pan. As soon as you see that smoke, you want to put it in. You want to put your beef inside. You don't want to let it smoke too long because then you'll burn your fat, and this is not a good thing at all. It's very unhealthy and it doesn't give a nice flavor to your meat. So the smoke is coming out here. Right away I take the meat and I put it in. You hear that sear? You want to make sure you hear a nice sear like that. That's a good sign that your meat is getting a nice color. If you don't hear the sear, your meat is going to start stewing into that fat and not too good. Because as you create color, you create what we call Maillard reaction, and this is flavor into your meat. It's the caramelization of your protein, and that's what gives it a nice little flavor. When the meat is cooked, I will put it on that rack here to let it rest. Why do I have that rack here? I wish I had a smaller one. But it's so, if there is juice coming out of the meat, they're going to drip into that plate, and then I will get those juice and put them into my sauce that I will be making later on. So we're going to color it everywhere. Everywhere. Put it here. Now I'm going to turn it over. Now I'm going to color it on the side. I'm going to place them on my rack here. And I'm going to let them cool down a little bit. Those are my sucs here. I want to keep them. I'm going to remove that grease. I'm going to degrease that pan. And I'm keeping the sucs. I'm also going to keep the grease because at one point I will need to sweat some vegetable for that sauce. And this is the fat I will be using. Very important point. Make sure that you let your meat cool down before you put it into the puff pastry. If you don't, it will warm up the puff pastry and it'll be very hard to manipulate it. And the puff pastry actually may break on you. So make sure it's cool. Now I'm going to show you how to cut that brunoise with those butternut squash here. We want tiny little dice like that. So to make those, I'm going to take my knife and I'm going to cut thin little strip like a julienne. Cut yourself. Now you're taking your julienne, I spray it like that, and now I'm going to cut my little dice. This is a rough brunoise. If that was for a 4-star restaurant, I'd put a little bit more care into it and make sure that all my little dice are evenly cut. Here I don't want any trimming or anything like that, so this way is fine. If you don't know, onions come from the Latin unio, which means united, because all those layers here are united together, connected together, and it's important that they stay as you're making that cut. So here I'm going to make very thin slices with my onion. As I make those slices, I make sure that the knife does not cut through the onion completely. I'm just trying to come as close as possible to the root and making my thin slices. Then I'm going to cut it into it this way. Like that, and try again to get as close as to the root as possible. After I make those cuts, I'm going to cut my tiny little dice. Oignon ciselé. That's a French word. When you get towards the end, you can just leave the onion this way and keep cutting those little dice. Okay. Now that I have my sizzling onion and my brunoise of butternut squash, I'm going to sweat them together. I'm going to start with my onions, let them sweat a little bit, then add the butternut squash to it. I'm using some olive oil here. Add the onions. When you add your onions, you don't want to create any color. Again, we're sweating, we're not sauteing, so no color at all. A little seasoning of salt and pepper. I'm going to cook that gently for a minute, and then I will add my banana squash. The onions take longer to cook than the banana squash. This is why I start with them. So we'll make sure we sweat those onions on a low heat so we don't create any color to them. After they sweat it for a minute, I will add to them my banana squash. So it's been a minute, add the banana squash. As I add them, I'm going to season them with a little bit of salt and pepper. I'm also going to season it with a little bit of herb de Provence. If you don't have herb de Provence, you can use some thyme, rosemary, sage, oregano, what please you. One thing very important is you want to make sure they are cooked completely. You do not want to keep those vegetables crunchy. If they are crunchy, when they bake in the oven with a puff pastry, they will release moisture. And that moisture is not a good thing at all for the puff pastry if you want to get something nice and flaky and crunchy. So you want to make sure that they are cooked completely through. They need to be completely soft. They cannot be crunchy. So the vegetables are cooked. I'm going to put them onto that plate. I want them to cool down before I build my Wellington. And I don't want them to overcook too and become completely mushy. So I need to spray them around like that so they cool down faster also. And if I was to keep them in the pan or put them in a small container, the one on the bottom will be mushy, and you don't want that. Again, I said you want them completely cooked, which doesn't mean mushy. Okay, just like that. While those are cooling down, I'm going to start working on the puff pastry. Here are my puff pastry. Before anything, I'm going to do some little decoration for the Wellington. Here I have that little pastry cutter, which is fluted. I'm going to use it, and I'm going to cut 4 of those, like that. That's going to be to decorate the beef Wellington. Then I'm going to make a little leaf shape. For that, I'm going to take a knife. I'm going to cut like that. And like that. So to be able to do that nicely, you want to make sure that your puff pastry is very cold. If not, you're not going to be able to shape them well. I'm going to make 2 more. So mine actually here is almost still frozen. Then, in the center, I'm going to create a line. So it looks like a little leaf. And then I'm going to cut, then I'm going to draw those other little lines here. See? Little vein into the petal. These are not flower. I may have said flower earlier. I mean a petal. Okay. I'm going to take those and put them here. See? What I'm going to do actually is take one and I'm going to have them twist a little bit. Just like that. Twist them up. Then those are going to go into my freezer till I'm ready to use them. Because if I just leave them like that, they're going to lose their shape. Before I put them into the freezer though, I'm going to give them a little egg wash. So the little egg wash needs to be very little. Don't put too much. Just a little bit. shape them. In the freezer till you're ready to use them. So I want the puff pastry to be rolled up about 2 millimeters thick. What I have here is more like 4, so I'm going to roll that a little bit, expand it almost. So I'm going to roll that till it gets to 2 millimeters thick. I don't want it too thick, because if it's too thick, it'll take too long to cook in the oven, and then my meat will be overcooked. I'm going to have that meat cooked between medium rare and medium. Okay, a little flour on the top, a little flour on the bottom, and you roll that. I have a recipe of puff pastry on my channel for the one who didn't see that lesson, so please check it out. Put it here, and we're going to roll it. Okay, that should do fine. Now here with me I have some large ring to cut the dough. I have one that's a little smaller than the other one. It will be the bottom one, and the top one needs to be larger because we need to go over the meat. So I'm going to cut 2 large and 2 smaller ones. Okay. Keep the excess here. So now make sure that the meat fits into it. It will. Make sure you place them on whatever you're going to use to bake them. So you don't have to move them after from a place to another, because they're fragile after you build them. So see here, I'm going to bake them on that. I'm going to build them on that. So I put the puff pastry here. I'm going to egg wash the edge now. It's easier to do it now than to do it after when everything is inside. Don't put too much egg white, just a little bit, it's enough. Now I'm going to put that crepe right in the center here. After you put your crepe, you're going to put some of your mushroom d'Uxelles. I would say a good tablespoon, but you spread around nicely. Then you take the beef, you place it on top of the mushroom d'Uxelles. Make sure you remove the string from the beef, very important. And then I'm going to put right on top here, nicely, my banana squash. So I push everything in. So actually that recipe, if you want to make it for 4 people, don't double up the vegetable, because see, I still have enough to do 2 more. So I will say the recipe I made is for 4 people. Okay, now I'm going to take my other piece of puff pastry and place it on top. Okay, and I want it to reach and seal it with the one on the bottom. Be careful also not to crack the dough. So you have to be very delicate. When you have it like that now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take another ring mold, a little smaller. I place it here, and I'm going to press everything so it looks a little bit nicer like that. See? Up. And then my other ring mold, the large one. And here I'm just going to cut it through and remove everything here. This way. Okay. Just make sure that it's still very well sealed together. Like that. Now we're going to create what we call a cheminée. I'm going to cut a little piece of the center off with a tiny ring bone here so it can escape from it. Now I'm going to do a last egg wash all over to make sure it brown well in the oven. Then I'm going to bake that for, I will say, 13 to 15 minutes. Depending how you like your meat cooked. That meat at that point will be medium. You egg wash it well everywhere. Before that though, I'm going to add my little garnishes that I made for that earlier that are in my freezer right now. So here are those little garnishes. I'm going to place them nicely on top here, just like that. You put them the way you want. Put it here, here. This one's going to come right here and right here. Okay. I'm going to put that in my fridge again because I just worked with that pastry dough and I don't want it to shrink on me. So I'm going to put that in the fridge 5 minutes. Then I will go into my oven. In the oven, 13 to 15 minutes at 375 degrees. When they look nice and golden, they should be cooked. The meat should be medium rare to medium inside. Now getting ready for my next class, which will be on how to make a morel sauce. Look at those beautiful little morel that I have here. I'm going to turn them into a very, very nice sauce to go with that dish. So make sure to look for that class. Let me show you. Beef Wellington that are cooking. That sauce will go with them. Here are our cooked beef Wellington. They look beautiful, nice and crisp. You want to let that rest for 5 to 8 minutes, then you serve it. And here you have it, a beautiful beef Wellington. Thank you. Bye-bye. See you next class.